Great. Okay. Good evening, everybody. So this is part two, if there is such a thing, of the FPL last resort, where you come when every other podcast is used up, or where you can't be bothered to wait for the next instalment of Above Average or The Wire or someone professional. We've moved this to Skype, so if it looks dreadful, then that's on me. But we've got a few guests to make everything look a little bit better. We're trying to appeal to the women in the audience and the kind of youth vote. So we brought in FPL Beery or Spencer. I don't know if you want to just say a quick hello to kick us off.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for inviting me on, both of you. Looking forward to this one.
Nice. You've had recent experience, haven't you, on the Old Man On podcast and introduced yourself there. So you basically probably got what 100k followers now.
Yeah, somewhere near that, I think.
So for those who don't know, we're all part of the same SKLW team, Son of a Gun, and we've recently signed Spencer this season, much to derision amongst certain parts of the community, but we don't need to talk about that here. It's let bygones be bygones and all that kind of stuff go. And we've also got guest user in today, which I won't say too much more about that. But Danny, you're back with us again, so say hello for us.
Yeah, cheers, mate. That was pretty much our entire preparation, wasn't it? Apart from trying to figure out how to work Skype, was me spending the last 20 minutes trying to figure out how to change my name from guest user to just Danny, and failed. So great job. But
yeah, I mean, it just goes to underline how pathetic we are. So if you're anything other than a loser, probably duck out now. But we do have I've moved away from the Jasmine tea of last week, and I'm on to an own brand peachy pale ale from M&S around the corner. It is Southwest London, so I can't do anything other than go to M&S, I'm afraid. So there we go. What are you on this evening, Danny?
I've got a few gluten-free Peronis lined up. I know it's boring, but it's my weekday tipple that goes down quite easily. So that'll do me. I'll open one in a minute.
For any gluten-free beer and ale companies viewing us, I'm sure there are plenty. We are here and we are ready to be sponsored. And I wasn't joking as well. If the local record shops around by my way want to save me some money and sponsor us, we are open to bribery, but nothing that involves any shaving or doing things like man tidying. No, we're old-fashioned like that. We're 90s men here, except for Spencer, who probably keeps himself very trim. We don't need to talk about that anyway. So yeah, hot topics this week. We'll be going through a whole bunch of stuff that's quite important to a lot of people. We'll start off in a few minutes' time with a little bit of a look at saying goodbye to old friends. I'm particularly sad to see a certain person go. As someone who has aims of their team finishing a sort of more than 11th in any given season, that would be nice. Spencer, you're a Sunderland fan, aren't you?
Yeah, that's correct. So I don't mind talking about it right now. We're doing pretty well at the minute. I don't want to jinx it or anything, but we're top of the league in the Championship after years and years of misery. So it's quite nice to kind of start playing well. But obviously, I don't want to, like I said, don't want to jinx it just yet because I know what it's like. There's always something around the corner with Sunderland.
Yeah, of course, some ups and downs and that sort of thing. Definitely. I'm not gonna. It's classic. I know this is awful, but it's that thing. Well, obviously, during my lifetime, West Ham have been up and down like a yo-yo, and I kind of don't pay attention unless we're whatever league we're in. I'll follow it and that sort of thing. So it's a terrible habit. But we have drafted you in as our Portuguese football expert, so hopefully that will be useful to us later on. Spencer is bona fide on that particular thing as well. All right, should we just get straight into it? We're not, as we said before, we're not interested in looking at last week's points or any of that kind of stuff, showing you our scores. If you care, follow us on Twitter, and we've probably posted it. I don't think I did this week because I preferred to share pictures of Kew Gardens for some reason, but in any case. So we'll kick off with, I'll share my screen if I can. Hopefully this won't be horribly big on the screen, but we'll go straight to Mr. Ten Hag. Hopefully it will share in a minute. Oh God, sorry. Oh, It's annoying, isn't it? I accidentally got a picture of Jared Bowen scoring. Yeah, never mind. Yeah, complete accident, Danny. So for those who are unknown, we've got our own Mancunian expert in the room, so we don't need to spend very long on this, Danny, because obviously people don't want to. It doesn't necessarily affect a lot of FPL decisions, but I mean, I don't know. Timing wise, are you pleased? Is it overdue? Are you excited? What's the thought?
Yeah, I think we're all pretty relieved now. Unfortunately, it's been that long. I feel a bit sorry for Ten Hag. The timing's a bit strange considering we did, we have put in some good performances recently, and the West Ham game was bizarre because we did absolutely annihilate you in the first half. It was actually genuinely bizarre. We should have been 4-0 up. So the timing's a bit strange, but I guess they already had those plans. I mean, I thought he would have been sacked. Well, I think we were all sort of hoping he would have been sacked at the end of last season, but then he obviously won the FA Cup. And I thought he would definitely get sacked after that Spurs performance because that was just completely unacceptable. And he didn't. So yeah, we're all pretty relieved now, I suppose. I feel sorry for him. I think he'll do a good job somewhere else.
And do you subscribe to this idea that it's going to make Manchester United players viable in the next sort of month or so?
I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, it definitely heightens their appeal a bit. But I mean, I'm not interested in United players at the moment. I think people are getting well carried away with it. So I'm quite surprised, really. Just kind of because of the nature of our team, though, as well. Like there are so many players, options. I guess Fernandes, would probably stand out, but we don't really know what it looks like for Garnacho or Rashford or any of the strikers. And obviously, the manager might have a good reputation and he might be good, and he seems good. I don't know much about him. Read a bit about him. He seems like a good bloke. He's an intelligent person and a good manager, but that doesn't mean anything until you come and get the job at United. We've seen loads of good managers come and get the job at United and do a terrible, it not work out. So I'm looking forward to it as a United fan, but from an FPL point of view, I think it's a waste of time looking into him. It's a waste of time looking into what his tactics are going to be because we need to see it first. Apparently he likes the 3-4-3, so people are already looking at Dallo and all that sort of stuff. But it's like, it doesn't mean anything. You need to see it first. It might be a car crash. He might change his tactics. And they're Man United, and thankfully we've got lots of good players for other teams that do play, and we know where they play, and we know whether they're good teams. So I'm not really interested in United players personally.
I think FPL wise, it's down to a sort of structural issue, isn't it? Really, I can't really see many teams where it would be easy to slot in a Manchester United player. At the beginning of that lovely 3-game run, I can't remember what it is, but it involves Leicester, doesn't it? Ipswich and Everton, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
So very difficult to see how you fit them in. Now, for people who've got might still have a hangover with Diaz or perhaps Johnson, and they can't be bothered to wait around until that one sorts itself out, etc. Maybe you would. But I don't know. What are your thoughts, Spencer? Do you think it is viable to look into them? I mean, I think you mentioned Dallo actually, Danny, and he's probably one of the easier ones to fit in, to tell you the truth. But I don't know whether it's worth kind of going ahead on that. I just think other people are going to have priorities. But what are your thoughts, Spencer?
Well, I was kind of hoping that we'd have had a couple of more difficult games to kind of work out what sort of team he was going for before the easier run starts. I have got a love for Amad Diallo after his loan to us last season. And there was a sort of hope for myself that he would be kind of, after a few good games at the end of last season, that he'd kind of cement himself. But I don't think that's likely. Obviously, he's around 5 million midfielder. So if anyone had that sort of a Dibbling or a Semenyo and thought, right, I need to get some sort of extra cover, if he was that nailed on right winger, then that would be an option. But again, I don't think it is. I think you are looking at that sort of the cheap defender. Masraoui, I think, is quite cheap as well. So it's a decent option if someone's got like a Greaves or someone like that I think he's out for a while. It might be a decent pickup. But again, I think it's just way too early to kind of predict what sort of team he's going to play.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I might be wrong about this. When I was watching it, it looked like Mazraoui got injured, but we'll see on that. But yeah, it's quite an interesting shout. I think he's about 4.6, isn't he? 4.5. So it could be quite useful for people who don't want to go down the kind of ain't Nori on 4 yellow cards type route. But yeah, I'm not going to pretend to kind of have a lot to add on Amorim, but I do know that, everything I know about him is purely because West Ham put a proposal in over the early part of the summer, and I know it looks ludicrous now that a team like us could get such a high esteem manager type thing, but there was an attempt made, but I suspect he met David Sullivan and thought, well, no, why would I do this to myself? But I mean, one thing I will say is I think his record this year is I don't think they've lost, have they? But I think they've got pretty much an unblemished record already this year.
You can have him. You can have after he fails at United.
Yeah, probably.
You might want a West Ham type job.
That's pretty much how it works. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'd settle for a kind of Thomas Frank or something at this stage, but
I think I read something on BBC Sport. It might have been, and they were saying how Amorim, when he was brought into Sporting, that he was kind of seen as a successor to perhaps a Pep Guardiola, and when there was a talk of Pep maybe going for that England job, that Amorim might be lined up, and now all of a sudden he's at Manchester United. But I think he's got, like you said, he's got good pedigree coming over. Yeah. He's managed in the Champions League. It's just see how that correlates to coming into the Premier League, which is undoubtedly a much harder task than the Portuguese league with all those sort of teams.
I mean, if nothing else, for you, Danny, and about half of our SKLW team support Man United, it's a reason to enjoy actually watching football again for a while, and that will be something, if nothing else. I mean, I kind of thought this season maybe I would start to enjoy watching my team again, but it hasn't really come to pass, bar a debatable penalty, obviously this week. Not a debatable penalty, actually, but yeah, we won't go down that.
Yeah, it'll just be interesting again for a while. You expect it to improve. There probably will be a bit of a manager bounce, and B, even with Van Nistelrooy, whether it's for a game or two, probably to be a bit more attacking, sort of all-out stuff. So again, from an FPL point of view, if you own a United player, and if like Fernandes or Garnacho or Rashford, then you should feel pretty good about it. It's better than it was previously. I'd be quite excited about it. I just wouldn't be bringing them in, but also, I'm not in that position. If I did have a free spot, I can't remember what position you're in, Rich, and what your team looks like. But if I had a kind of spot and I had a few transfers and had kind of 8.5, whatever it is, to spend, then I might consider Fernandes just because he's a good player anyway, and he's, so now he's even better. But I don't have that spot, so
yeah, no. Personally, I think that the obvious thing to say, I know people have talked about this on a couple of pods this week, but I don't really see how getting a Manchester United player this week would be in anyone's priority list. That would be my first thought. I just don't see how it would be the case. If you were considering getting Salah, well, obviously get Salah. That's fine. If you were going to drop Haaland down, we'll talk about that in a second, and move money around, I don't see why you would use it to go for Manchester United players. I suppose the only people I can think of is anyone who was worried about Gabriel and might want to go down that route of picking up a wing back, and even that's pretty risky with Chelsea at home. So I don't know. All I will say, I'm happy to have the Hoyge in my draft team. That's the only thing that I can think of. That's pretty good.
Honestly, Zoff from the wire, I'm sure he won't mind me saying. I'm sure he's not got time to watch another pod anyway. But I am surprised. Like we've got a group chat, and he's looking at United player this week, and he's looking at any one of them. The defenders, Haaland's been mentioned, Garnacho, and that surprises me that people are willing to go on United now. But anyway,
maybe it's a case of betting against your own team, isn't it? But I think, I don't know. That sounds to me, and he's not going to watch this, so it's probably okay. But it sounds like early week bravery to me. The kind of move that you make in your head on a Monday or a Tuesday, but by the time you get around to Friday, you think, maybe I'll just get the guy who's definitely good with good fixtures and whatever. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking about being aggressive, we'll go on to our kind of thanks to people who did send in questions and that sort of thing. We'll get better at kind of putting it out earlier, and eventually we'll stream, and you can drop your questions in the chat, and not give us a chance to actually think about our answers. Yeah, I mean, Danny, you're in this position this week, aren't you, where you're not considering what you're going to do about Salah Haaland
Not anymore.
because you've already had time to consider it, or well, so yeah, the big question for people is whether they should take this risk, well, a perceived risk, because I'm assuming his ownership is still around sort of 73, 75%, something like that, isn't it, Haaland? I might be wrong. Yes, tell us about your thoughts about that, because you've already, well, no, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think about this before, and I'm probably going to rant about it, but as we sort of said before when we were talking about, I can't remember the exact topic before. We said we talked about whether Haaland was worth 50 million, that kind of stuff, and there isn't a right or wrong answer. And the same as this, there isn't an answer as to whether you should sell Haaland or get Salah. And I was talking to FBL Hedgehog just before I came on, actually, because we were talking about what you just mentioned. You recapped a conversation that we had just before the start of the season and said, look, we were so right. And it's obvious, but we sort of said, we were saying to each other, we're both scared about this season because it's going to be so swingy and it's just going to be so unfair. And there are so many good picks because of the price points. And of course, that's what's playing out. And, you know, so there's no, you can't say whether it's better to keep Salah or Haaland. So you need to kind of accept that and rid yourself of any kind of cognitive biases, and whether it's like loss aversion or I don't want to sell Haaland, what if he bangs, or is Salah going to bang? They're both just as likely. It's just as likely that Haaland will get 15 and, you know, Salah will get 2 as it is that Salah will get 15 and Haaland will get 2. And that's obviously the case, you know, with pretty much most of these big hitters. So this is a long way of saying that everyone's asking themselves this question, and are they asking it for the right reasons? Like I'm not selling Haaland necessarily because I think Salah is better or even a better captaincy option this week. I'm not sure. I'm definitely worried. I might even slightly rather have Haaland as captain. But for me, it's just, and we'll look at my team in a bit, you know, the structure of my team and what it offers me, and it gives me a stronger squad all around and a bit more cover for Gabriel and those sort of things. Like I think it's really important to not try and view this decision as a 1 week, as you know, whether it's going to work out this week or not. And that sounds really obvious, but because there's going to be such big swings, like I'm trying to think of it as I'm accepting that there's every chance, more so than lots of seasons gone by previously, that I can finish 1 millionth, play really well and finish 1 millionth. This isn't going to be a fair season. There's going to be people who are crap at the game objectively who finish in the top 10k, and I could finish nowhere. And I'm just viewing it as in terms of thinking about the next 10 weeks, 20 weeks, all the way through Christmas, and what I actually want my team to look like, what I believe, almost stripping it back to those kind of raw elements of FBL, and just, you know, because statistically the players are so similar, the models have them so close, these big hitters, these captaincy choices, they could all go either way. So that, for me, that leaves you with the only way really to go about this and to navigate this season is to just try to think of the structure you believe in, the players you believe in, who you think is a good player and good at the moment, and you know, what you feel happy with. And that's why I've made the moves, because when I look at my team over the next 5, 6, 7 or 8 weeks, very slightly, I just feel happier with what the team looks like and the structure looks like and the players and the you know, the cheap forwards I've got up front than I do with the keeping Haaland version. And I just need to be prepared and ready for the fact that I could easily be 30 points down this weekend. I'm just going to have to accept it, because there isn't really going to be any skill on that. There isn't a right or wrong answer. There won't be afterwards, even though afterwards everyone will say, oh, you should never have sold Haaland when he had Bournemouth, when, you know, it was such a good matchup stylistically for Areola and all that nonsense. You know, it's you know what I mean? So
yeah.
What do you think, Rich?
I think the dynamic is almost entirely dependent on. This is a really boring me answer, as you could probably prepare yourself already. So Danny has 4 transfers, and I think that, to my mind, if I had 4 transfers, I'd be doing it as well. I have 2 transfers and 3 or 4 obvious problems I can't solve at this point in time. So I couldn't spread that money. And I think if you got, what is it, 15.2 would be in the bank, right? It's 15.4. Now, okay, so let's say you get yourself a kind of Chris Wood or what have you, and you can resolve, if you're not really convinced by that Brennan purchase you made a couple of weeks ago, and you sold Trent, and you can resolve those issues immediately with the transfers. Great, it doesn't solve any problems for me. I would take out my captain, and I would probably replace a player who's got one of my better fixture runs coming up. So I don't. It really doesn't solve any problems for me. But actually, this is where Gabriel comes into it. I mean, for a lot of people, it's going to block this move because they've got that issue to deal with. If they've only got, Danny, for example, you've got 2 Ipswich defenders on the bench, and we'll come to Gabriel in a minute. And for some people with only 1 or 2 free transfers, they will have to plug that gap, even though the bigger aggressive move is obviously to tackle the 2 players on the left. Spencer, are you going for this?
I've had a look at my team over the last couple of days, and at first I was kind of thinking, right, I'll just do it. And I've kind of gone off the move now. And I think the Gabriel injury, I'm in the same position as you with 2 free transfers, got a bit in the bank, about $1 million and 1.4 million or something like that. And like you said, my team's got a few bits of it that I'm not really fond of. So it is more than 2 transfers that I'd have to make, and like we've said already, I don't think there is a definite right answer on captaincy this week. There won't be next week or the week after that. It is a flip flop, and using transfers to kind of move around seems like a good idea when you think about it at first. But I think I'd rather just stick with it and hope that at least half the time Haaland outscores Salah, and then just hope that one time extra, and then kind of end on the sort of the positive side of that variance. But it's a difficult one. I think it's one of those that's going to go down to the wire. I don't think I'll be making that move. It's just where else I go, because my bench is currently Mykolenko, Greaves, and Semenyo. And although Semenyo is obviously an attacker, I think I'd rather play Mykolenko away at Southampton with the attacking prowess of Southampton not being great. But the Gabriel injury kind of solidified the fact that I probably won't make the Haaland Salah swap, and then bringing in someone like a Chris Wood or something like that.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think what's quite interesting is, and actually I know, Danny, you'll probably have a view on this, but there is like a really interesting kind of psychological direction, I think, that happens when you get certain situations like this, where someone like a Gabriel has given like a manager like me the sufficient distraction to avoid making a big decision. Whereas otherwise that might have been the only really interesting thing to do on the table. And it gives people that little kind of comfort blanket of, I can deal with this small issue and distract myself from the challenging big decision.
Yeah, but also, on that note, it's not just that. It's actually fully justified, because the margins are so fine, and so if you can answer the question in a logical way as to why you've picked your team, and it is logical, then obviously you should be perfectly happy next week, because it's I think a lot of people, and I don't want to speak for people or make assumptions, are not finding whatever it is that's their rational reason, for making moves. So because it's so tight, because it's so close, people start to sort of, then they're unable to answer that question, just like I am. And you do things like turn to Twitter instead. Well, I don't know. People are saying, I don't know the answer to whether I should have Salah or Haaland, because you can't know the answer, because they're both great options and you can't possibly choose between them this week. So instead, people turn to Twitter, and it's like, it becomes like a loss aversion thing, or should I say transfers, or what the majority of people doing, what are the group doing? And I just think you need to, whatever path you take or whatever decision process, you need to find what it is and what's logical. And even, so for me, just thinking about it, what's optimal and what's data optimal probably does take a little bit more weight, even for me, than normal at the moment, because it's, at least there's something there, there's something tangible where I can go, okay, I can justify it, I can work with that, even if there's only 0.5 expected points difference between maybe Salah and Haaland. Obviously, that works together with how your team and the structure and the players that you want, but also there is that as well. I'm not going to beat myself up about the fact that obviously I'll be gutted if Haaland scores a hat-trick and Salah blanks. But I can justify it to myself in terms of the structure of my team, the shape of my team, and the strength of my team. And also it happens to be optimal. What I'm not going to do is, and I refuse to do anymore, and everyone who makes that mistake is sort of get distracted, look externally, what are other people doing, what are good managers doing, what's the group doing? And yeah, I mean, if Gabriel's injured, it doesn't make any sense. You're not going to take a hit, or you're not going to, field him on a 50% chance he plays, because they're the fine margins. So yeah, I envy it in a way, and it could obviously work out.
I'd be interested in to see both your views on this. But if all things considered, let's say you had the full spate of transfers. That's a word never used on a FPL podcast. And you could make the decision. Would you rather go in for a Haaland sale in game week 10 or 12? Because I see a lot of people considering those as the swing points. And to avoid fence sitting, if I can, I mean, if I had as many transfers as Danny, I would definitely rather do that change up now. Because I think there are opportunities there for captaincy that probably aren't that obvious from 12 onwards. So this week, you've got Salah next week, Salah 12 are all options. You've got Son game week 11. You've got Palmer, if you want to go down that route, 12 as well. There's lots of kind of captaincy variables that come about as a result of selling Haaland now that don't really happen if you do it in 12. So the problem is someone like a manager like me, and Spencer maybe sounds the same, is that like this week isn't really that logical for us, but selling in 12 is an option. But then the captaincy doesn't really help us a great deal on that score. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about that, Spencer? As to if you don't do it this week, would you consider doing it in a couple of weeks' time?
I don't see how game week 12 for Haaland is a bad fixture.
Oh, it's not.
Home against Spurs. That's, if anything, that's probably an easier fixture than game week 11. But I think Haaland is Haaland. We've seen him score how many goals in a couple of weeks already this season. I don't think that I'd be thinking about changing purely down to fixtures. He's just fixture proof, isn't he? That's what he is. I think if you look further down the line, maybe you could say at some point that you could probably sell him, but it's a matter of time before those silly missed chances, the ones when he's 6 yards out and he's putting it over or something like that, or a couple. I think he had a few chances on the weekend. It's a matter of time before that turns into 1, then it's 2, and then it's 3. And it's the same with Salah as well. They're both going to keep on scoring points like they always do.
I think this is why for me. Sorry. I hope I'm not interrupting there, Spence. But
that's right.
This is why for me as well. I'm trying to answer the question like more kind of holistically or on a more meta level, because, and again, I probably didn't sort of say that properly before, but so the way I view it, and this is the only way I view it, given exactly agree with Spencer and you, Rich, totally, and Haaland carry on banging and blah blah blah. But I think because of the emergence of all these things work together, because of the emergence of the cheap strikers, who I think there are loads of great options, and I do think it's not just because they're scoring goals. We've go on to that. I think it's because they're actually really good picks, and there are a few things changing in the way that just what's happening in football. But because of that and a few other things, I believe, and it might be completely wrong, my view at the moment is that it's a team without Haaland and with everything else, and with basically my team, is better than a team with Haaland. That's how I see it now at the moment. And I can be completely wrong. It might be wrong in 4 weeks. It might be wrong in 5 weeks. So that's another part of a decision process for me about how to justify it, is that I actually at the moment just genuinely just about believe, especially with Saka, with Palmer, with Salah, hopefully, blah, 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 that a non-Haaland team is actually better long-term in terms of the squad and what you get from it, in terms of the points potential. And yeah, as a sort of side to that, I do agree about the next few. I agree, Spence. Tottenham's at home is not an easy fixture, but it is a little bit more unpredictable. You never really know. There was remember last season they were like Spurs went 2-0 up, didn't they? Son and Madison, and I think it was like it finished 2-2 or something, 3-3. But I think Haaland got an assist in that game or something. But you got Liverpool in terms of those fixtures. Bournemouth away could be a battering. Not really sure what to think of it. Brighton away, they're 2 away games. Tottenham could be good. Then you got Liverpool and Forest, and I'm viewing Forest as a bad fixture now. I wouldn't be captaining against Forest. We talked about that, Rich, didn't we, last week?
Yeah.
So for me, again, just broadly, I think that a non-Haaland team is slightly better, and the fixtures are no longer amazing. You just had Southampton at home, so it's a pretty good time. But again, obviously, it depends how many transfers you've got.
And just before we move on that question, is there a distinct plan to bring him back in, or is it just a case of wait and see?
There isn't a plan for me at the moment. I don't usually plan that far ahead because we'd be talking 6, 7, 8 weeks. I plan to save transfers whenever possible. I think it gives a little bit of extra flexibility in terms of future planning. So if my squad is stronger, fingers crossed, I should be more easy to be able to build up 3 or 4 transfers, which makes it easy to get Haaland if I do want to switch.
I think I would add as well that obviously in my situation, if I gave it, and say for example, Gabriel's fine, or Mikalenko just comes in for him on this weekend, and I roll another transfer, if I can get to 4 transfers in game week 12, then that does give me the option, like you've got at the minute, Danny, where I can kind of do a sort of mini wildcard and change my team around and make that decision then. But I don't feel like I could justify ripping apart parts of my team for a -4. But I think it is kind of sort of dependent on the situation in most teams.
Spencer, did you want to look at? We can look at your team now if you like.
Yeah.
Sure. Is it?
Yeah.
Because so Spencer won't be able to join us for the whole thing. We'll come back to the next conversations about cheap strikers, and I guess Gabriel will feature in our team discussion as well. I'm just going to skip forward a bit to there he is. Spencer's team. There he is. As I said, he's very much here to appeal to a different audience for us. But yeah, what do we think? Is there a clear plan going into this week? Are you looking at moving anything?
I was looking at obviously that Haaland Salah sort of switch up with the 2 free transfers, but I think now, and it's a difficult one, I think if I could roll and say Mikalenko comes off the bench, it's not, if anything, it's probably the second easiest fixture of the season for Everton, other than Southampton at home. So him coming off for Gabriel, if Mikalenko's around, that could be helpful. Rodgers again, still playing 90 minutes. I brought in Mbuemo last week, and a couple of weeks before that I brought in Brennan Johnson. They've been doing well for me. So obviously Palmer as well and Havertz. So I want to keep hold of them as long as possible, really, especially with game week 12 around the corner when the fixtures swing. I did make the Saka to Palmer move, and the thinking behind that was that I'd still have 2 Arsenal, but now I'm now 1.5 with the Arsenal with Gabriel's injury on the weekend, and I've still got covered over my sins as well. And obviously, I know you're going to speak about the cheap strikers now, but it's not been enjoyable owning them when I'm seeing your likes of your Chris Woods and people like that banging in the goals. But yeah, I think obviously Haaland captain. Probably the optimal choice this week for my team, but other than that, I think that's pretty much it.
Yours is a really interesting one in terms of like a representation of like the general community, I would have thought, because you have 2 free transfers, so you can get Salah, and you don't need to make a transfer for your defenders, because I think we can assume, based on at the moment, the assumption is that Gabriel will probably miss the next 2, and then he's back after the international break. That's at least what I think we should think based on what we've seen. And obviously, Mikalenko's a fine substitute at the moment. So I know what you're saying. It's probably is, well, I don't know. To be honest, when we talk about optimal, review would probably say make the swap. I would have thought to Salah. So, but then obviously that depends on how you use models and all that sort of stuff and the value of free transfers, because I think it's really close, because obviously you could roll, perfectly reasonable to roll when you've got 3 transfers, so you're in a bit stronger position. But
yeah,
this is why it is really interesting to me and really complicated. I think the reason why I'm in fate, one of the reasons, and I've said it before, I rate the strikers so much. Like I basically at the moment, and again things could change, but at the moment Wood just looks like a season keeper to me. It's too much. It's too repeatable. It's just a good team. People like Wood, Jimenez, Wissa, even Cunha, if like, but especially Wood and Jimenez for me at the moment, they're so good that I see them as just absolute long-term holds, and they, better than Johnson, better than Rodgers, better than Semenyo, better than a lot of these midfielders.
Yeah.
So you can easily get that switch where you've got a great striker, you leave him in there, basically with the idea in your head of leaving him in there long term. And then
I think it would. Yeah, it would be that Haaland, Semenyo, Rodgers. Those would, if I did roll, and it would be those 3 that would be gone. Even I think that would be the moves.
Even next week, you're looking at similar moves anyway, aren't you? That's the thing. You're just pushing it forward, and it's like, I understand it. It just could go either way, and it's just horribly punishing. And there's definitely an element, I think, there is a little bit of an element of loss aversion going on at the moment, of just like, if I sell Haaland, he's got Bournemouth and he bangs. It's hard to pull yourself away from that. But
yeah, I think and I know you kind of mentioned Bournemouth, and we don't really know what we're going to expect, and the matchup kind of maybe suits Man City. I think we've seen how they played against Arsenal. I know Arsenal were down to 10 men, but they aren't shy to attack. And when they went 1-0 down against Aston Villa, they came out guns blazing, trying to get another one, and obviously got a goal at the end. But it won't be an easy game as such for Man City. I think they'll comfortably win, but it's got like the hallmarks of like a 4-4-2 or 4-1 or something like that. It's how many that Haaland gets. He's not guaranteed to be involved. He has like 10 touches a game. But normally those touches are when he's kicking it in the net. So yeah, but I think you're right on that sort of going without Haaland is probably what a lot of the community are thinking. I don't want to do, but yeah, if I'm thinking about it long term strategy wise, moving off him anyway, it's something to think about.
It's hard, and I'll ask you, Rich, but because I don't know, I do. If I had to put money on, I do think Haaland's more likely to score probably than Salah. He's probably Salah has to do less for more points. You do feel a bit safer with Haaland.
Yeah.
As for this week, I can understand it, but obviously what you're losing out on. You're trying to think of it as a combined points thing. For me, you're losing out potentially on one of a choice of very good strikers. So there is that points difference to balance it out a bit.
Yeah, and I think it would be the 2 free transfers would be Semenyo and Haaland out. I think Semenyo's on 4 yellow cards as well. I think might be on 3, but I think Rodgers is a bit of a steal at his price. You can kind of keep him in there at that price, especially since we've only got 2 free transfers as well. I think Semenyo would be the sell.
Yeah, same. What do you reckon, Rich?
Well, I think people are avoiding the obvious issue as well, which is that you've got to have a Bowen plan in there, for the long term. So make sure you get that in. I was going to ask actually, Spence, just a couple of questions about your team, because I know it's one of those difficult things in these situations, isn't there? Whether you want kind of the unsolicited advice or whatever, but we're here now, right? So, Havertz, what are your thoughts on that? Because obviously there are lots of people performing lower price, etc. Are you just likely to hold that until the fixtures turn or not?
I think I've got myself in a situation where he is a hold, especially since now I've sold Saka. I think selling him now and being left with one Arsenal potentially in game week 12 and trying to scramble to get Saka, selling a Palmer maybe or something like that. Havertz kind of fits in there all right at the minute. I'm not his biggest fan.
Do you know what I really like about Havertz at the moment? Jackson.
Seriously. Go on.
I just feel like that's one of the things that my team's not going to have the way I'm moving forward in terms of structure at the moment. And obviously, I'll have transfers in the future, but I feel really, really. I mean, Jackson's. I know the minutes might be a little bit questionable at times, and people have talked about the odd midweek game, but he really. I mean, his run coming up as a joke after 2 games.
Yeah,
you've got a position there at least. You've got a price point there, which
I'd say I had a look at this earlier. I know I've poo-pooed the idea of Haaland at 12 as not being as good as 10, etc. But it does enable you a nice. If you stock up the transfers, 4 or 5 of them, Jackson is suddenly one of those people that you probably would go to in around about a game week 12. And it is quite nice because, let's say, for example, you divided up the Haaland money in 12. You get Jackson and Watkins, for example. No one's going to get them now, right? Watkins has got I think he's got 3 fixtures in 4 that look great. Isak also is, fixtures that look pretty good and no one's talking about him yet. Well, 1 or 2 people are talking about him. So those kind of options come into play that, as you say, you might not be able to reach. I wouldn't be able to reach if I kept Haaland for sure. So it's quite an interesting one. And last question for Spencer, because just in case, basically just tell us whenever you have to sort of drop off. What do you need to hear one way or t'other on the Gabriel side of things?
I think, seeing as I've got Mykolenko this week, I think I'll be leaving it, just hoping that, like you said earlier, if he's back just after the international break, then so be it. But I'll just have to pray for a bit of proper Brexit football from Dyche and a couple of 1-0s with Calvert-Lewin and bullet header at the back post sort of thing, and then Mykolenko getting the assist for the for the goal. But yeah, I thought it was going to be bad when I heard it, and when I heard about it, and when I watched it back, I thought it would be a bit more with the ligament or something like that, and I don't think it's as bad as first seemed. So he should be all right in a couple of weeks' time, like you're saying. I don't want to sell, and I don't see really, other than maybe Vardiol, a decent option where I know that I've got guaranteed points coming in, like an Arsenal defender that gives you.
Just to throw it out there, I can see Vardiol Hall this weekend.
Vardiol is just last season. It was the only deadline I missed, and it was the Fulham away, and I had Walker, and it was leaked that Walker was starting, Vardiol was, and I was thinking, if he had starting up, I'll do it. Didn't do it, and the Hall happened. Absolute killer. Cost me top 1K.
Oh no! Oh yeah, of course. So again, we brought Spencer in on the back of sort of just about almost 1K finish, wasn't it? It was like 1,050 or something like that.
Yeah, 1,055, I think.
And I also bought. I mean, when I first came across Spencer / FPL Beery, I mean, I don't know whether Danny's like this as well, but I kind of assumed he was a sort of, gunslinging kind of all-night drinker kind of guy, and as it turns out, he's sort of analytics and steady picks. I don't know what's going on. You've grown up too fast, Spencer. We live vicariously through your sort of youth exuberance, and you come here and pick sensible teams. It's not.
I mean, it's been a while since I had a few beers on Friday and sort of posted just a random photo of my face on Twitter and kind of left it there and see what happens. It's always quite funny to see what happens. But yeah, I think it's a matter of time before that comes back.
I always loved that content. That's how I first started to know you were. Just some blokes randomly posting his face on Twitter. I thought it was great.
I thought you had a career in acting, Spencer. To tell the truth, I enjoyed it very much. Spencer, before you have to go, because Spencer's going to rugby practice because he's fitter and basically more useful than Danny and I. Do you want to just give your very quick view on which of these guys you like in the cheap striker category, and before you head off?
Sure.
I was good. Sorry, Spencer. I was just going to say before you do, that's the question. If you were going to do that swap, which striker would you get for Haaland?
So I don't trust Wolves yet. I've already got Mbuemo, so that rules out Cunha and Wissa. Jimenez is an interesting option, but I'm not sure on minutes. And Wood is Wood. He's always done all right for me when I've had him in fantasy football. And like you said, he's been banging in the goals recently. Doesn't seem like it's going to stop at least. And his minutes are pretty secure as well. I don't think Awani is going to come in at any point and kind of steal his thunder. So I think I'd probably go Chris Wood. If not, a little bit of a punt on Jimenez.
Nice.
I think Welbeck maybe is a slight
a couple of
option,
weeks'
maybe.
time. It's looking. I mean, and we still don't really know what the hell is going on with João Pedro. I've asked a few people, but no one really knows. It's very not wildly dissimilar from Gabriel in the sense that, okay, people can say internet, they can give rough estimations, but no one really knows, so you can't really plan for it, and it's quite difficult. And the truth of the matter is, with someone like João Pedro, is such a great price, isn't it? At 5.4, you could easily do anything with that because you save $500,000 on Calvert-Lewin, let alone anyone else. So it was so handy. But I don't know. It's been very difficult.
Yeah. What's the penalty situation with Fulham as well? Is it Jimenez on them or Pereira?
I think it's Jimenez now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Jimenez. We're talking about pens. Sorry, I was just looking at.
Yeah.
You remember the Jimenez pens for Wolves? He was reliable as well.
Yeah. I think it would be between them two. I do like Cunha. He'd done all right last season, but I just think Wolves are. I don't know. I need to see a bit more this season to put the trust into one of them, especially if we know how Wood has been doing and Jimenez how they've been doing, just scoring goals. I just think, especially if you're taking Haaland out, you'd want at least the safest option. But that's probably the way I play. It's probably not the bravest, but
I don't. One of the things that's just fascinating about looking at some of these striker options at the moment. I'll talk about my own thoughts in a minute, but it's just looking from a kind of a West Ham fan perspective at how disappointing this kind of set of slides are. Is that all of these strikers in the last couple of seasons would be people that I think we should be aiming slightly higher than all of them, but they'd all be genuinely a lot better than the options that we have. It's ridiculous still relying on old man Antonio to go into beast mode 3 times a season. So what can you do? Is this a good time to say goodbye, Spencer?
Yeah.
Don't feel forced there.
No, I've actually got to go. Otherwise I'll be late. But yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been nice chatting with you both.
Yeah.
I'll have to listen into the rest of it later on.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again soon, but we'll see you back in our chats in a couple of days probably. But thanks for joining us.
Nice one,
Brilliant.
Spence.
Okay. Yeah, cheers guys. See ya.
See you later.
And then there were 2, just me and guest user. You've already made your decisions, haven't you, Danny, on this? So can you just sort of take us through your kind of thought process, I suppose. Sorry, it's very motorbikey outside. South Circular, I'm afraid.
Usually police sirens are on your way.
The most the crimes around here are probably sort of high level financial fraud and evading inheritance tax or something like that.
Yeah.
What was your thought process then? Take us through. I mean, these plus I don't know who else is there. Brighton strikers, maybe a couple of others. How did you eliminate it? How did you narrow it down? How did you sort of rule people out?
Yeah, because I love this sort of thing because it is hard, and if you can find a way to justify something over another, then it becomes fun. Because then it's only fun if you're happy with your choice.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And if you can't decide, it's horrible because then you just think, fuck, whatever I do is gonna, I don't know where to go. Whatever I do is going to backfire, and everyone else is going to get the points. But if you can decide who you like, then should be less pain when they don't score and everyone else does. But I just think Chris Wood Chris Wood just has to be number 1. It's just Forest. It's as much Forest as it is Wood, and it's Wood, and it is how he feels at the moment, how fresh he is, and the form and the fitness, and Forest just look great, and you can just tell. You read around the club, and it's the messages around the club, and it's the same thing with it's kind of the defense at the moment. Everything's just everything's going as it should at the moment at Forest, and you can they've got a good manager, a good setup, good sort of team, and all the players buy into it and they all love it. So that's always a great starting point. And obviously Wood's 90 minutes and penalties, higher mins than the rest. He's just a big handful. So Wood number 1, and then I've got Jim number 2. To be honest, I just watching highlights at the moment. Jimenez just looks on it. He just looks confident. You can see all his movements, all his decisions are confident. All his runs are in the right places. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, I wasn't really there and I wasn't really feeling it. But a few match of the day watchings, and yeah, I can buy into that. But so that's, and obviously I think he's on penalties, and I'm not worried about his minutes in terms of being replaced. I don't think that's going to come. I guess it's not ideal that his minutes are a bit lower, like, I don't know, 75, 80. But I think Wissa's really good as well for different reasons. So I need to think more about Wissa because for me, I'm probably going to bring in 3 strikers. Not this week, 2 this week, and then possibly someone else next week. Well, I'll show you that when I look at my team. So I'm probably going to be choosing between Cunha and Wissa next week.
Oh, okay. Right, yeah. I think there's yeah. I mean, money allowing, I can see why that would be quite easy, not an easy decision. What I was going to say, I mean, not to cut you off because you might want to. There's a few other names that you could mention, but I think a lot of it comes down to timing and how much you are led by fixtures. Because if going this week, I would, you'd consider Wissa a lot more strongly, Jimenez a lot more strongly, and Wood more strongly. Whereas going, say, 1 or 2 weeks down the line, I can see why you might be persuaded by Wolves. I don't know enough about Strand Larsen to know whether he's worth that million saving. I tend to err on the side of caution until I see it. And that's the problem with Wolves, is like if you're picking this week, you're really gambling on this idea of what they're going to be like when they're required to be on the front foot. And we simply haven't seen it yet. So I don't know. If I flip it to your decisions, for example, if you're choosing this week, I suppose my example would be one type of goal. I've seen Chris Wood and Jimenez score one type of goal recently, which is where they held back a defender, swiveled and rifled the ball into the bottom corner. They both scored that kind of goal in the last couple of weeks, and that's the kind of goal that you only score when you're really confident. Mm-hmm. There are certain types of goals you get. I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example. The one that Wissa got, for example, this weekend, it's an instinctive finish. He gets in the right place, lots of XG and that sort of thing, and that's great. But the goal that Jimenez and Wood have scored in recent times, it just exudes the kind of, the chest out, I'm the man, I own this team, this is my place, and if you want to get it, then you're going to have to win it off me. And yeah. I haven't seen, you don't see that from Wissa to the same degree because he's not that kind of player, but you don't see it from the Wolves players either yet. I mean, maybe they will show that, but I haven't seen it. So I think, this week it's much more straightforward. I think the other thing, by the way, is that I know that in your team you've got this situation where you can bench Wood against Arsenal and that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't even know where to start on this discussion. But I mean, the Wood thing really helps if you've got 8 attackers. Let's just get that out of the way because obviously everyone's got. And it's a really easy rotation with Rodgers. It's like game week 12. I think it's game week 12. Wood's got whatever he's got, City or Arsenal, and Rodgers got Palace at home. And then for the other, City or Arsenal, Rodgers has got Brentford at home. Interspersed between Rodgers' bad fixtures. So that rotates nicely. And totally agree. Like with those sort of goals, those goals where, it's those goals where they don't even have to look where the goal is. It's just they just know where the bottom corner is and kind of rifle it in. But they're all so different and so interesting. I mean, Wissa is something like I need to get my head around more because it's harder to understand from a kind of confidence or psychological point of view, like it is with Wood and Jimenez. It's just because they feel good. They're both on pens. They're both great players. Both kind of central point of the team. But Wissa, I'm maybe not taking enough notice of because the XG that he's racking up.
Yeah,
it's the way that Brentford are designed. We saw it on Match of the Day and the weekend, and like these kind of runs, these triangles where it's like these triangles between the fullback or whatever and Damsgaard, who is always making these direct runs. I'm not, one to look at it from a really tactical point of view. That's not the way I tend to approach the game, but these kind of runs from the midfielders and these kind of systems, these triangles that just go in duff into the middle and then as a through ball, and every single time it's really kind of direct and all the players understand it, and it just looks so clean and kind of repeatable, and they keep putting up the XG. And all of these triangles and these moves is Wissa right in the number 9, as far forward as you can be, always on the end of it. And then Wissa also looks ridiculously confident, but he just looks like that's a trait. He just looks like it's not a guy who's going up and down dipping. It's just the way he views the world. The guy just doesn't give a shit. He's not overshadowed by Mbeumo. He's not overshadowed by anyone. He just sort of knows how good he is, and so I really like Wissa, and I really need to think hard about it. Spence said, Spence ruled him out because he's got Mbeumo. I don't feel like that at all.
No, I don't quite get that. Yeah. Plus, obviously, Mbeumo's just holding the spot warm for Jared anyway, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Well, but there is a debate about that later on, probably. Not this week. I think the other thing, but if you are struggling, I'm not going to sort of hand out too much advice. I'm not in this kind of position where I'm picking this week. I wish I was. I mean, I've got the unenviable situation of having, it pains me to say it, Solanke and Calvert-Lewin at the moment, which I feel like a few weeks ago felt like a fairly logical, safe bet, right? Dominic Solanke was racking up sort of 1.6 XG in one game and then another one in another, and looking like the main man, briefly, and it's all gone to pot. There we are, to keep our viewers happy. And obviously Calvert-Lewin's own story. But in terms of variables, there's a few things here, isn't there? I think Wissa, obviously, slightly worse after the next, 3? I think something like that. But
yeah.
And he also has the unknown variable of a couple of other players coming back into fitness and that sort of thing, which is just a very minor aspect. But I think the other thing to say is that you don't have to, because there are so many options this season. I think people, might look at your decisions and be like, oh yeah, Chris Wood, but that run's ending soon, and whatever it might be. And if it does get to that point and it's looking like an unhealthy decision, you've got Jackson right there for a million more. You've got you're going to have Brighton strikers who have a run of about 10 games in a row, which is really nice. You're not married to them forever. So I do think people get a bit hot and heavy about this idea of you're keeping them for the long haul. That it's not hopefully, but not necessarily. It's a similar thing with Calvert-Lewin, isn't it? I think we all thought if it doesn't go well, we can switch it on, at around game week, probably 11 or something like that. So it's not the end of the world.
But yeah, like you say, I mean, the bigger the pool of these options, the better the position becomes, and the more valuable the position becomes, and the more useful it becomes.
And there's more than in midfield now. There is more than in midfield.
And there's more than in midfield, and obviously there are so many good, my midfield 4 at the moment, for example, this week would be like Mbeumo, Palmer, Saka, Salah. So just like massive heavy hitters where you don't really have that space necessarily for the value players, and maybe Morgan Rogers on the bench and stuff. But yeah, what was I going to say? I can't remember what I was going to say now. But it doesn't feel just all sort of coincidental either. There's teams are kind of playing a little bit of a different way now, and I'm not trying to analyze it too deeply or pretend that I know about it tactically, but you do see these sort of evolutions in the game and different ways of approaching. And I saw this, saw this thread the other day by John McKenzie or stuff about how a lot of teams are starting to play more direct, and it's not all this kind of tiki-taka and passing and so on. And but a lot of these teams now, these number 9s, they just look. They're always in the right position. They're actually a number 9. They're actually getting the chances, these teams, they're so advanced these days in terms of creating XG. We can see it in the numbers, like, your Brentford or Fulham. The numbers for these guys are a joke as well. I'm not sure about Cunha, probably less so, but he's a different type of player. He's got different avenues. He's the best player in the team. Incredible bonus baseline, different profile. But I guess they've got Strand Larsen, who I'm less keen on, but it's a similar type of thing. But you know what I mean? There's a lot of these teams now where and it's like Welbeck. I've always liked Welbeck. He's always been a great player, but suddenly not only is he playing well and he's a good player, but his position and his role in the team is really central and important all of a sudden as just a number 9, who's sort of the one who where the all the chances and sort of action revolves around. So you've got Welbeck, pretty much, he looks like the most involved player on the team when they're going forward. Jimenez looks like the most involved player on the team when they're going forward as a number 9, as a sort of sole number 9, however that looks. Wood is the most involved player going forward because he's occupying all the defenders because he's a big bastard. And Wissa always looks central at every chance. You know what I mean? So there might be something going on as well, just generally in terms of the way these teams are playing, that these number 9s, they're emerging for a reason. And it just so happens they're really good players and they're confident and so on and so on. So again, I'm willing to make that bet at this stage of the season. It's easy to change it around. You've got Jackson's, you've got other, you've got Rodgers. You can easily switch it to a 5 midfield. As you said, there's Welbeck's there. There's maybe João Pedro in the future. There's probably some other strikers we've forgotten about. But there are so many. It makes me feel really comfortable at the moment and confident to have 3, put my faith in it for a bit, and just have loads. That allows you to keep Trent and double Arsenal defence and 4 big midfielders and so on.
I think just on that very quickly, I think this is why, as you say, there is a kind of a little bit of a movement away from some of the types of midfield picks, the Hugh Johnsons, your Semenyos, etc., in terms of the confidence we have in them a little bit, because Jimenez isn't going to play out wide. Wood isn't going to be dropping, that far, deep, etc., to set tons of people up and whatever. It's maybe a little bit. You see in these, they are instinctively what they are. They are box players. They're number 9s. They hold up. They're also the kind of players that, if you take Wood, for example, I know that he hasn't got any assists yet, but he will, right? He is the kind of, he's got some of the kind of, I thought that I was going to see this from Fulkrug this season, but he's got the ability to lay off to a pacey, support striker and that kind of thing. So I think there is reason to be pretty confident in there. And the other name, as you say, it's not on this screen or on the list, etc., but I do envy people with an easy route to Jackson. I think the problem I have is it really would meddle with my structure, and I would only be able to go down it if I wasn't planning for Saka or someone. So it's very, very difficult to justify. But yeah, lots of good. I think if picking this week, I'd be leaning towards at least picking up one of the Jimenez Wood group. If it was picking next week, I can see why your brain might tick over a little bit more towards the kind of Cunha route. But the truth of the matter is, I think it does matter, as you say, whether you've got 7 or 8 attackers here, because if Cunha becomes much more appealing in a 7-man attack, whereas say a Wissa, Welbeck, etc., you can fit them just about into an 8-man attack, and that kind of makes that a little bit more straightforward.
If you were wildcarding this week, then who would you have up front? What 3 strikers would you have if you were on wildcard? Assuming that because you're on wildcard, you wouldn't have Haaland.
Oh, right. So there's no Haaland. In which case, that's quite an interesting question. So you can have anything you want, right? Because I was looking at this. I think I mentioned this earlier, and this is that if you change up Haaland in 12, no one's going to get Aston Villa, and then suddenly you can get Watkins for Palace, Brentford, Southampton, and so on. Suddenly that becomes an option. Newcastle, West Ham, Palace, Brentford, Leicester, Ipswich there. That's incredible. No one's really talking about it yet. So you can start to think about these things. But if you're going now, again, it's going to depend somewhat on what transfers you have. But I'd be going for at least one of the Wood Jimenez group. Okay,
well, you've got to pick 3, so go on, pick 3.
I think I'd be tempted to go early on Jackson, to tell you the truth.
Would you?
If I hadn't got a huge amount of transfers sort of racked up, etc., if you had the ability to move off, I think it would be quite nice, for example, to go for something like you could maybe then justify going for a Wissa short term and then moving on, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think but if I had to, I'd probably go Wood, Jimenez, and Jackson, which is not what I'm going to do at all. I might not even have any of those players. So
it's good. It's good to know. Obviously, if you were wildcarding, maybe you would have similar midfield. Maybe if you did have Trent and
Yeah,
if you did have Trent and Gabriel and Saka and Palmer and Salah and Mbeumo, then you
but
probably
I really do
couldn't
think
afford
this.
Jackson.
You can build a justification for. And this speaks so well of the pool, doesn't it? Because you could speak highly about 7 or 8 striker options in the next sort of 5 or 6 weeks. Can you? You could justify Brighton, you could justify Villa to an extent, you could justify Newcastle, Chelsea, even Man United, depending on how confident you are. You've got lots of options there. Personally, I'd like to see a little bit more evidence from Wolves before I would commit to that. I've seen people talk about double strikers from them. I think that's absolutely insane. I think I'd rather go down a 4-4-2 route with 8 Nori than I would rather do that. Not that I would do that either necessarily, but yeah. What I thought we'd do actually, so we've had our chance to talk about strikers. There's fixtures up there. We don't, I guess, need to go to that just yet. But let's have a quick look at the decisions that you made, because we can come back to me then after that. So just walk us through where you're at, because you had 4 transfers, and then we'll round up in a few minutes' time with some questions from people that sent them in.
Yeah, I was going to say remind us to look at questions and stuff, because some people were kind enough to respond on Twitter and stuff who might be watching. Yeah, I forgot we hadn't actually looked at teams. So I had 4 transfers, and I've done Haaland to Jimenez and Semenyo to Salah for now. And yeah, I will very likely do Greaves to a defender who I think will probably be a Forest defender, rather than 8 Nori or anyone else. Again, thinking long term, thinking about how I view them. And so that's a bit of backup for Gabriel this week. And then I've still got another transfer, and obviously completely suboptimal. But I will very likely do Calvert-Lewin to Wood as well, and I'm fine with that. Everyone's talking about it's suboptimal to sell Calvert-Lewin. It is suboptimal, and I don't advise it, but I'm still selling a player for a better player and a player who's got better expected points on models and the bookies and so on. And if it backfires, it backfires. I think it's fine to have that confidence in the player and just switch it around for this week, because it does. If I make those moves, I've got 3 players who play on the bench. I've suddenly got a bit of a stronger squad. Fingers crossed, I'll have room, to get another transfer next week. So I'll probably make all 4 transfers and go full suboptimal Sally. And do Calvert-Lewin to Wood.
Yeah, no, fair enough. It's hard to criticise that. Yeah, I mean, it must have been good though seeing Vardy get that goal the other day. Especially, he's outscored Calvert-Lewin by quite a distance, even though there's not a huge amount of returns there.
Yeah, he was the hero last week, Vardy, and I just like that fixture situation. And Vardy doesn't, again, he doesn't rack up quite the same XG as Calvert-Lewin, but he doesn't. Obviously, Vardy's Vardy, and he's so clinical. So he just needs 1 or 2 chances, definitely on pens, probably 90 minutes. So yeah, I quite fancy him this week, Vardy, because obviously I could sell either. I'll still have. I think when I looked at those moves, I had like 0.6 left over as well, which is something. It's quite nice. Even when I make all 4 of those moves, there's a bit of money there for. Oh no, sorry. What I've got way more than that. It's 0.6 if I do all 4 moves and Vardy to Cunha next week.
So that's where you're leaning at the moment. Yeah,
I've got a couple of million left after those 4 transfers. I'm leaning at the moment. Anything can change in a week, but yeah, I could do that. I can just do Vardy to Cunha next week as well for Southampton at home.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm just thinking in my head. I've already said what my front 3 would be. I probably would. Maybe I would go Cunha over Jackson for a while, and then see if if one of the other 2 needs switching up and that sort of thing. But it's very hard to argue that. Again, with the 4 transfers, it just goes to show what difference that can make. And you're about to see a team that would benefit from quite a few transfers.
Well, before to talk about Cunha briefly, I know we sort of say we want to see more, and it's more difficult to judge a player. I find it more difficult to evaluate a player like him from an FPL perspective, but he does look very, very confident. He's a very good player. he's on all these kind of set pieces and stuff. He looks like he's the one who's nailed. I think you assume he's on penalties, but his baseline bonus is ridiculous as well. And that is quite appealing. Like he doesn't any returns. And I'm just looking now, Wolves have had the worst fixtures by a mile of any team. And he's still got, within those terrible fixtures, he's still got a 6 and 8 and 2 9s. And it doesn't matter, that. So is that 9? Yeah, so that's in a 5-3 game. He gets 1 goal and he's top bonus because his baseline's a joke. Like every time you see Cunha score and you go to check the bonus page, you just see Cunha's name with like 50 bonus points, 50 BPS. So he's getting 9 points in a 5-3 from 1 goal, 9 points in the 2-2 against Brighton from 1 goal, 8 in a 3-1 loss. So he got 3 bonus, got booked in that game. So he got full bonus in the 3-1 loss to Villa. So it's quite significant that Cunha is just, ridiculous for baseline bonus. And then obviously he's the one with the best long-term fixtures. So I do like Cunha.
Yeah, I mean, disclosure, he's likely to come in for me next week. We'll go to me now. So anyone who, there won't
sure, or is this just a random template off Twitter or?
I'm trying now. Just for any YouTube officials watching, Danny meant to call Chris Wood a big bar steward earlier, and that was a mistake. And I was about to call him a fecker, which is okay because it's not quite what it sounds like.
You get an option on YouTube, when you're uploading for suitable for kids or not.
Yeah, you do. And we're both educators. We have someone mentioned this to me last week, but it's probably the only podcast in the FPL community where you need a doctorate to be on it. Spencer, probably not, but but hey, we like to give generously to those less fortunate than ourselves. Anyway, we'll talk about this. So I'm in that classic position where if I had 3 or 4 transfers, I'd be talking about something very, very different. And this week, I'll allow you to give your views. I'm always wary. You're the kind of, for anyone who has met Danny a few times, he's the kind of guy that you beware about getting involved in engagement too far because he'll persuade you or get in there. He'll needle his way. So if you're making a chip decision or something like that, you want to not be in the same room just in case.
Yeah, but I always ask permission first, don't I? I won't just do it unless you actually give me permission to give me an opinion.
Depends on how many of these, but yeah.
True.
I see. You can probably see this. Maybe you'll agree with this or not. I've got, I think, 0.9 in the bank, 2 free transfers, and it's the kind of week where would I prefer any of that group before to Solanke at the moment? Yeah. Would I prefer any of the group that you've just showed me to Calvert-Lewin at the moment? Yeah. We can go on. We can go on like this, and this is the problem, isn't it? The predicament. That you can talk yourself into as you talked about loss aversion already, but I could easily talk myself into doing nothing here because it looks fine. But this season, as with last, personally, is going in that direction of it's drifting. It's already drifting, and I don't want to be one of those people that says it's getting away from us because I know that you've got a view about that particularly. But it is a tricky time. I do want to have at least one of these weeks soon where I just have the ability to flex 3, 4, 5 transfers so I can really do something with this. And at the moment, I just don't have a great deal of utility with 1 or 2 transfers. I haven't been able to build up more than 2 transfers in any given week, because of injuries or something like that. So there's not much I can do. The only thing, logically, you could go to Cunha a week early. That's fine. And then I'm good for a while, and I'd probably go with him simply because of the longevity of fixtures, and then I can eventually start building the avenues that are a bit broken, like a Johnson, Solanke. They're not going to be there for very long. But basically, the problem here, Danny, and you can probably tell with this, is that if you keep Haaland, it is very difficult to make the moves that you want. But it's hard to move him on this week because of the lack of transfers. So looking forward, for example, if I want to get Saka, for example, the only options are this: you drop down Solanke to a dud striker, and then you go Johnson to Saka, and then you might have enough money to do something with Calvert-Lewin, so you play 3-5-2. Okay, that's fine. But as we know, the better value options at the moment are strikers. They're not midfielders. So hanging on to Semenyo, Rodgers, relying on them, am I comfortable with that? Maybe not. Another option is, and I'll be honest with you, I have the weak mind of I wish someone would tell me that Gabriel was out for like 2 months, because that would save me a whole lot of brain space, because dropping him to a cheap defender means I can do anything I want. I can have Cunha and Jackson up front in a couple of weeks' time, but I still get to keep Haaland and I get Saka for Johnson. The whole world looks rosier, but of course the logical thing to do would be to hold Gabriel. So take it away. What do you think?
Oh God, that is tough. I can see what you're saying. I mean, I definitely wouldn't bring
It's a bit
Cunha
of
in
a
a
chess
week.
situation, yeah.
Sorry.
It's a chess situation at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't bring Cunha in a week because I don't see the point.
No.
So, and I presume when you say that you mean for Calvert-Lewin or Solanke is what?
Yeah,
you mean?
yeah. It would be for Calvert-Lewin, yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah. So I wouldn't do that. Because then they're too close, those two. So the extra transfer then just becomes more valuable. I'd rather have 3 transfers. Don't think you're gonna hope. Well, I hope you do I hope you would gain a lot from that, because I hope Calvert-Lewin blanks this week. Sorry, but
I just to feel something anymore, Danny. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, that is the challenging thing for you, isn't it? It's the Saka situation that complicates things, and I've not really looked at this team or thought about it. I think.
I'll be honest with you. When we talked a few weeks ago, I was a little bit more amenable to the idea of the Havertz, and then using that Johnson spot for something like a Bowen, that type of thing. But it's, I don't know. I know that it's difficult, unusual fixtures at the moment for Arsenal, but it's very hard to watch and think and not just think, oh, I just need to sort that out and leave it, and not just mess around and frit around the edges.
Well, I'm just looking now, and Arsenal. I think you have to just forget about Arsenal now, and you've got your double defence, and because they've got Newcastle away. I mean, obviously, Arsenal, but they've got Newcastle, Chelsea, and Forest. So you've got three suboptimal fixtures where you can just forget about them. You have to now, don't you? And you've got Johnson, Solanke, and Spurs look dodgy, but they could turn that around at any point. As a non-owner, I'm still worried every week about Solanke and Johnson and Spurs and when they're going to start scoring goals. And obviously, they've got Ipswich in 11. So I feel like in your position,
but
you just keep them until 11.
True, but I won't be the only manager. So there'll be some that watch this and they'll be thinking, okay, yeah, but what do I? Okay, I know I have to hold Calvert-Lewin this week if I have to. I know I have to hold Solanke and Johnson until 12. They're probably going to be doing. A lot of people are going to be doing what I'm doing, building up 3 or 4 moves, and then they're going to work out where to go with it. And that's when it becomes complicated. Do you sell Haaland at that point and make life very easy for you? Do you sell Gabriel this week, and then you've got an easy out ball to be able to move the funds around next week? There are quite a few complications with it, which is why it's nice in your position to sit there with the double mids sat and whatever, triple rather. But
yeah. I mean, yours is like, it's a season where it's what can you do? Any other season you'd say, yeah, and I know you will, and it's like optimal players probably just roll kind of thing. But it's one of them that could just go either way. So it's what you feel more comfortable with and what you're going to do anyway with the extra transfers. And to me, you either roll or you make the Haaland to Salah switch via, I think, Semenyo, so that you can keep Johnson and Solanke for Ipswich. And then obviously you could have Wood or Jimenez, for example, or whoever you want, and Salah. I know you thought about this. I know you know all this inside out, but again, thinking about my team, the other thing that does is I think you have to view Rodgers as Spurs away as not a great fixture. I know he could easily score, but he has looked a bit tired recently. Spurs away is not an easy fixture. It's not. We don't know what could happen there. So I try to view that as a weakness, given all the great options that are available.
Yeah.
So you would be able to bench Rodgers, and you would suddenly have eight attackers straight away, and obviously, so that so it's a Wood or a Jimenez or whatever, or a Wissa and Salah, and then you're committing yourself, and it just is what it is. Then you're just subject to the variance and the torture that happens of what happens either way. I can see why rolling, because you probably feel slightly safer just captaining Haaland, so it's totally understandable. But you'd get to bench Rodgers and have a very good striker with Salah, so there is additional points on paper, or you just roll. I can't see anything else.
No.
You've got the Forest defender, which is great. So you've got
I think that's the silver lining here, is that I actually get to play Milenkovic, which is nice, because he's the obvious pick in that range, and the lads pick and the cool guys pick. Anyone who's a tower of attraction to women went for Milenkovic, really. So
Richie's saying this because he knows that I'm.
No, it's fine.
I might buy
they're all good. The only thing with them is that they don't have a terrific amount of obviously playable fixtures in the near future. But again, they're a bit like Chris Wood, in that you would happily troll them out against almost anyone except for Arsenal and Man City away, and that's probably it. So I don't know. I'm almost definitely this by now, but I'm almost definitely going to do nothing. But I wouldn't be that disappointed, as you can imagine, if Gabriel was bad news, because it makes life a little bit easier. But yeah, the likelihood is probably nothing, unfortunately. But yeah, it's excruciating to watch those. Oh, actually, all three strikers for very different reasons in the last week or two. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the way, isn't it? Like I said, we've said this 1,000 times, but it looks painful for you on paper. It must be frustrating. You want to make moves, but Haaland scores 2 or 3 goals and Salah blanks, and it's 30 points on my team, which has got 4 free transfers. It's just a complete coin toss. And when in doubt, do nothing.
Hopefully, it all goes horribly wrong for you. Let's go. We'll finish up because I promised the good lady an evening of scented candles and bake-off and whatever it is that she wants. Tips for those who are watching, for a long and successful marriage. We got a few questions from. I think a good question, which I'll finish with a bit later on, from Errol, who's manager of another SKLW team, Bafana Banyana. I can't remember all the way around. Forgive me, Errol. Who's a terrific guy, and there are some really, really decent people in that community. So it was nice to be talking to him lately. But also a couple of great people from our own team. Who I'm going to go to for questions. I mean, let's just have a look down and pick anything we haven't covered. I think we've talked a little bit about Gabriel, what to do. I think, getting news is pretty difficult, as we know. But for most teams who can cover it, you probably wait another week and just see what we hear. Do we remove funds from the defence? Any thoughts? Is this a good opportunity? I mean, some people will be going back to Trent this week, won't they, potentially?
Sorry, I was just reading. Alex has got a question on Twitter, so I was just going to come back to that. Do we remove funds from defence? Gabriel, what to do? I mean, again, based on the information that we know at the moment, I think you just keep Gabriel. We assume that he's going to be back in a couple of weeks. If we get bad news, then get rid of him. But he just feels like you don't really want to. Ideally, you don't want them playing around with that, spending transfers on someone who I would want to keep, especially with that run of fixtures they've got. Most people have sold Trent. I like keeping him, but as I said last week, maybe I'm going to be the one who pays for that, because maybe he gets no points for the next 3 or 4, and then people just get him back easily. But I like just keeping him there.
Yeah, he's going nowhere for me.
Yeah. And so I think the short answer to do we remove funds from defence is no. Like, there were just loads of really good picks and cheap good picks. So
Mikey also says, I mean, this is have we missed the Wood boat? Clearly, I mean, is that meant to be a joke? Maybe it is. I'm not sure. But clearly you feel no, so I'll answer that one for you. How good is Danny Welbeck? We covered it a little bit. I mean, He's definitely in consideration when I need to get that third striker spot. If I was keeping Haaland, then I won't be able to afford much better than Danny Welbeck. And the problem is the variables about how they play. But even when João Pedro and Rutter were all available, as far as I could tell, he's getting 75, 80, 85 minutes anyway, which is incredible. I don't know how old is he now? 33, 34?
Yeah, it must be something like that, 32 to 34.
And a lot of these strikers haven't got great fitness records in a way. You know, they are relatively prone, but I think you can kind of give him the benefit of the doubt at the moment. So I'd keep him, Mikey, for sure. I know you will anyway. And I know you were talking a little bit about switching between Wood and Welbeck, but I mean they're both if you got plenty of transfers, by all means, but if not, I'd be leaning on hold.
Yeah, of course, yeah, agree.
I'm going to go to Fraser's question here. What's he talks about expensive or cheap defenders and the sort of balance between them, but he also talks about the ceiling of Trent. I mean, you've mentioned him. Any take on how you would balance your defence at this point, and whether you're looking to change it around? Would you get? Are you a bit tetchy or sketchy on the Arsenal defence, for example?
No, I mean it's not ideal at the moment because when you're out of the groove of getting clean sheets, it always makes getting clean sheets a bit harder, and the centre backs getting messed up and injuries. It's not fantastic. It's slightly worrying but only worrying in the sense that I won't be selling them, so I'll just have to hope because it's still Arsenal. And in terms of Trent, you know, again, it might be a flaw to some extent of the way I play, but it's sort of price points for me. I don't really want to have to think about the defenders. So Trent and the Arsenal defenders are the best defenders in the game. So I'd ideally just want to leave them there and hope that things turn around for them. Obviously Trent's got a really high ceiling. So yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of people because they haven't seen a 15-pointer, they're getting a little bit. But you know, don't be surprised if you see it in the next few weeks. I hope so. I'll be honest with you. I know that we all have this in the back of our minds a little bit, but seeing people sell Trent last week and potentially not having Gabriel, you know, there is a little bit of potential. Dark arts going on in the way I'm thinking about this at the moment. So I hope you get punished, basically. But I need some joy from somewhere because I'm not getting it off my own steam. Anything else? Best cheap defenders that you trust? You're looking at a cheap defender at the moment.
Yeah, and just as answers one about Haaland before that.
Yeah.
Do you see Haaland to be better than the other premiums? I think it's really complicated to ask. One thing I will say is that when there are so many other good options as well, so it changes the argument a little bit, and there are lots of other good, reliable options. Things like I think we have to think that things like being a midfielder comes into it a bit more. It really does help because we're thinking less about captaining one player like Haaland every single week, and therefore the points being doubled, and more about the general. That's how I see it, as the sort of how many overall points each of Saka, Palmer, Haaland, Salah are going to get, and so it's quite significant being a midfielder and getting an extra point for a goal and clean sheets and so on. And so Haaland does have to do more to keep up with that. So of course, if Haaland just becomes this incredibly reliable player who's much more reliable than the others, then it changes things. But at the moment, I see him more in the pool, within the pool, especially Palmer and Salah, rather than him being better than the rest. Do you agree? Or
well, I think okay. So this is the problem, isn't it? Is that I know I remember there's a great Stuart Lee bit about there not being a context-free word, and it's true. There isn't a context-free word. Now there's not a context-free premium. It's a strange link to make. You okay? Is he probably he's probably the best. Yeah. But also we've just listed about 7 strikers, maybe even 8 that look pretty good in the next sort of 5 to 10 weeks minimum. And is the gap between them and Haaland, when you think about the overall look of your squad, against something like meddling around with, dibbling and Semenyo or whatever versus Salah, Saka, Palmer. I mean, come on, we all know how that looks. Really, it's so when you take that into context, then maybe not. I think at the moment you'd struggle to not say, when all things considered, is Palmer at the moment, isn't it? It's Palmer.
Yeah, and I mean, there's all
but only when you all things considered.
Yeah, there's always all things considered, and there's always context, and the other biggest one is, at the end of the day, is 2.5 million. It's not. It's the strikers one is massively important, but it's also 15.5 million. It's a hell of a lot. So yeah, there are loads of other things considered. Will he score more points overall than Palmer and Salah? I'm not sure really.
And
cheap defenders.
Perhaps we name one each that we like.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to say, like, the way I'm feeling at the moment is pretty much Forest. I do like Aït-Nouri. He's obviously on 4 yellows. So Forest defenders is where I feel.
Yeah. I mean, I unfortunately don't have anything interesting to add to that, because I agree. Aït-Nouri is very tricky because you need to see about the whole structure that you've got, right? But I think there is an argument, by the way, for using Aït-Nouri as a 4th slot up against a Rodgers in a week like this, for example. If you've got Aït-Nouri on your bench and you're playing Rodgers, there is a bit of an interesting debate there. I'm not entirely sure which way I would go, but I can see why people might play an Aït-Nouri in a 4-4-2 this week, for example, or a 4-3-3. I don't know. It depends on your structure. But yeah, I'm very happy with Milenkovic sat there ready to be a sort of man beast. Yeah, you can pick other Forest defenders if you want to, but he's the beastly one. I can see. Unfortunately, I can't really see all of what David's written there for FPL Gills, but cheap strikers. We've talked about that changing structure. I think we're leaning towards the idea that it is a reasonable time for changing structure. So you probably go this week, maybe in 12, or you probably don't change it up. What's the bottom question there? I can't actually see it, Danny.
It's is a defence full of budget options viable?
No.
Okay, good. See, I like that. Be decisive.
Yeah, it's not in character, is it? As you know.
No.
Yeah, no. I think it would be absolute madness not to have at least one of Trent, Gvardiol, Gabriel.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessary, balance-wise. There's another question from someone, I think I was just looking on Twitter. FPL Snooker has asked something similar, and I just don't think it's necessary balance-wise. It's too much of a big bet to make. Like, just keep the price points, keep the good players, and find ways to work. There are lots of good cheap options for the front 8 as well, anyway. So I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, I think I've stopped sharing screen.
One other one, just because Alex has put a big question on Twitter, and he just wants to know about thoughts on Foden this week. Hold or sell, and you know what? You can answer that first, because I think people know my thoughts on Foden, and I struggle with it this week. But he wants hold or sell Foden, or hold him or sell to Saka for free, or to Salah for a hit.
Right. Yeah, that is quite a conundrum. I can see why he's considering that. Again, boring answer, but it probably is going to depend somewhat on on your profligacy of transfers and that sort of thing. If you got 3-4 free transfers, then by all means go into Saka or going to. Well, he can't, right? He can't do that. Obviously, if he's taking a hit for Salah, then clearly he's only got 1 or 2 moves tops. I mean, I'd probably hold for 2 more. I mean, I don't like him. He's not really my kind of pick, and he's even less your kind of pick. So, yeah, I mean, you've put in you bought him for a block of 4 fixtures, right? And it's a bit like me with Solanke. You're just going to have to eat your hay.
Yeah, exactly. It's a curse. It's always a question. As soon as you buy Foden, every single week is a question: when do I sell him? When do I keep him? Do I need team news? But if Saka had a very good fixture, then I'd sell him. And you've got to, because this is honestly, you never know when to sell him, and as soon as you sell him, it'll be the worst time. But Saka's not got a great fixture. I wouldn't do it for a hit, so I'd just keep Foden for now for the next 1 or 2.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, you know, as people from Norfolk would say, where I used to live, that will learn you, and that's how you got to take it, I'm afraid. You know, I mean, it was unlucky to a point, right? You'd have expected a bit more this weekend for sure. You gambled, and you're a better man than me for giving it a go. You know, hopefully it works out for you next time. But yeah, no, thank you for your question. Hopefully we'll be doing a few more sort of YouTubey, livey, streamy questions in the future when we know what we're doing. But as you can probably tell, we don't. So you know, it's taking its time. I think we probably have to call a halt to proceedings, Danny. I have no idea how long we've been going, but maybe it's been almost a couple of hours.
Yeah, bordering on black box.
And we've both got partners who deserve our attention more than we should give to each other, perhaps. So perhaps we'll do that. But yes, we're all excited to see how you complete your four transfer go on Friday night or Saturday morning or whatever it is. For me, I'm going to accept that life is futile and full of pain, and to embrace the suffering is my way forward.
Yeah, and you're very good at ignoring all the FPL pain. You'll have a fantastic day planned out on Saturday, and you'll be going to the theatre and some lovely sushi restaurant, and you won't even know what's happening until you get home and put on match of the day. Whereas I'll be suffering in pain all day and drinking in a pub. And
I managed to avoid FPL this weekend in a couple of different ways. So I think on Sunday afternoon, I went down to my local record shop, got a couple of Arthur Russell vinyls for anyone who's interested in some Japanese ambient techno from the 90s, which Danny I know is a huge fan of. And on Saturday, a John Lithgow play at the Royal Court. So it's still on. It's about Roald Dahl and his the Lebanon crisis of the early 80s, for the just to try and bring a bit of culture to the FPL community. It's just me trying to hold up that heavy weight, really.
Absolutely.
But no, thank you for joining me, Danny. And we'll do it again soon, and hopefully we'll have. It's great to have Spencer with us earlier, and we'll have another interesting guest next time as well. And if he's watching and he's got this far, Pep, I hope you had a nice week at Centre Parks. Getting all the rest that you need. Apparently that means you're well off. I have no idea whether that's true, but he does live, you know, near Windsor, which sounds posh. So great. Okay. Have a good evening, Danny, and thanks for joining me. And we'll see everyone else here soon. Good luck with your game weeks.
You too, mate. See you soon.